I'm going to show you exactly how to create and use approvals in Jira Service Management. And the first thing we need to do is go to the actual project where we want to add our approvals. And I'm going to be using IT operations as my guinea pig and my sample project. So I'll head over to here and go to my queues and open up a random work item. And the reason I'm going to do this is because before we actually set up the approval, we need to make sure that we have the correct field available for the approver. So the person who's actually going to approve the request itself. And we do that by just going to the sidebar and making sure that approver is an option. There's also approver groups like you see here. If you want multiple people to approve or a group of people to approve, you can use that as an option. I'm going to use approver since that's going to be just a single person to approve my requests in this scenario. So I'll make sure that that's here in this list. And if it's not, we'll click the configure button on the bottom right. And we could search for the approver inside of this list or within the fields on the right side. So I'll search for approver, and there we go. We got our approvers field. Usually these are out of box. If you don't want to use this one, or if you can't find it for some reason, you can create your own field as a custom field. Just make sure it's a user selector or a multi-user selector and not like a free text. So I'll grab this and drag it into my project, and I'll throw it in right under my assignee and reporter. I'll click save, and then we could head back to the screen. And now our approvers is listed on this ticket, and we could go ahead and set up our workflows next. So I'll go over to my project or space settings. And in here, we're going to go to our request management, and we're going to find our workflows. This is where we actually set up the approval sort of automation and where we set up and configure who's approving and the actual workflow that it goes through with canceled or approved when someone does select one of those options. So I'm going to use the service request as an example because service request with approvals already has an approval. So I'll click on edit this workflow, and all we're going to do is add a couple of statuses and a couple of transitions. And this is really going to depend on where you want this approval. Sometimes these are added before the workflow is allowed to start. Sometimes there's a couple of statuses before the approval happens. That way you could go through and sort of triage the request, add some information, some context, then send it for approval, and then only work on it. In some cases, like in this case, I'm just going to set it as the first status. That way, anytime a new work item is submitted, it cannot be worked on until it has been approved. So all I'm going to do is click the add status at the top. I'm going to search for an existing one, and I'll just search for approval, and maybe I'll try waiting for approval. There we go. That's the exact one I want. And I'll add this in. And I'm going to change my create issue to waiting for approval, drag and drop, move this around a little bit. And what I'll do next is set up a couple of transitions to make sure I have one for when it is approved and when it is not approved. The first one I'm going to set up is when it is approved. And I'll make sure to remove this any option as well, allow any of the statuses to move into this one, because we don't want things going into approval randomly from when something is pending, for example. So waiting for approval will go straight into waiting for support. And I'll give this a name of approved. Approved, spelling that wrong. Approved, there we go. So waiting for approval into waiting for support, and that's going to be when something is approved. We need to add one more just in case something is not approved and is denied. And in this case, what I'm going to do is drag this out and go to canceled, because if it doesn't get approved, the request gets canceled and then eventually closed out. So in this case, it's going to be, I'll just name this canceled and keep things very simple, create this. And now we have two statuses going from waiting for approval into one option as approved and one option as canceled. Now we can actually set up the approval automation within this status. And the way we do that is by clicking on it. And then there is a little option for, or there should be a little option for approval here somewhere. Let's see, approval, there we go. Little plus icon, new workflow builder's a little bit new to me, so still getting used to it. Muscle memory dies pretty hard. So we could select the number of approvals, which is either everyone, specific number of people, or a specific number of people from each group. These two you don't have to use unless you're wanting like a group approval, which I do recommend oftentimes, because if you're approving with one person and that person's out on vacation, you're probably not going to get approval until they're back. In this case, I'll just select everyone, but you can change this option if you have multiple approvers in your approver group field. Then we select the source for the approval and for the approval. And we're going to select Jira field. And we're going to find the one that we dragged into our project and into our work item earlier. So I'll pull in approvers. That's the one I need. And now everything's set up. We click on next. There's a couple more options that we need to add here. And the first one is going to be is if it's approved. And remember when we added those status transitions? Well, we did that to select them right here. So in this case, approved and canceled are our only options. And the options that the approver will have is approve or deny. So when it's approved, it'll go directly into waiting for support. When it's denied, it'll go directly into canceled. And one more field option here that is not required, but you can add, is to exclude specific people from allowing to be the approvers. So you could exclude the assignee or reporter from this. Usually this isn't really necessary. Reporters don't often approve things or ever. Assignees also often don't approve things. Usually it's a stakeholder, a manager, but if you did want to add those restrictions, you can do so here. So now everything is set up. I'll go ahead and add this, and our approval is set up and ready to go. So click on update the workflow, and we could run through a quick test to make sure that this actually works. I will note that this won't work for one specific reason, and I'll show you exactly why, but the actual functionality of the approval transitions and hierarchy, workflow, and all that should work just fine. So let's head back to our project and create a brand new work item, and we will call this approval test. I'll make sure that it's a service request, approval test, and we could give this a description if we'd like. I'll leave it blank, keep things simple, and click create. We could go to this request, and I think I might have created the wrong one. Service request, nope, we're all good. Okay, so the first status we're in as we set it up was waiting for approval. And everything's working so far. The only problem is we don't have an actual approver assigned to the approver field. And we see that right here by this error. And we could easily go in here and actually add this approver in manually, which is a little bit scary, and I'll show you how to prevent this later, because you don't want someone going in here and changing the approver whenever they want. You want to make sure it's a specific person or group or stakeholder manager that's not going to be changed by just anyone. So I'll set this as myself just to show you how it actually works. But once that approver is added, this will update, and now you see exactly what the approver will see when they have this option. They'll also get emailed with this exact button layout, and they could click the options from their email rather than jumping directly into Jira. So now I hit one of these two options, either approve or decline. If I approve, we then get a transition directly into waiting for support, and the rest of this workflow can happen as it needs to. So everything is working, everything is functioning up until this point. The only problem we need to solve is for the approvers field. And the way that I like to solve this, there's really a couple of ways of doing this, but I like to use an automation. And the reason I like to use an automation, and if we head over to space settings, then we go to our automations tab, is because we have more conditional logic available. We have AQL, which is assets within Jira that we could pull in for these approvers and like find certain objects, groups, and teams. And like, for example, if some reporter submitted something specific, we could find that reporter's manager in our assets and then pull that individual manager in as the approver. So you have a lot more flexibility here. You can also do this through a workflow, but again, you're a lot more limited there. So I'll go ahead and create a brand new rule, create from scratch, and then we're going to add a trigger of work item created, and we're going to add a couple of conditions first, because we don't want this to run every single time something is created. We only want it to run whenever we are creating a service request. So I'll add in a work item condition, work item field condition. I'll find the work item type. So I'll find type in here. Issue type, they're still calling it issue type here. I'm sure that'll change eventually. And then equals, we'll make sure that we're selecting the correct one that we added the approval to. So now this automation will only run when a service request is created. You could add more conditions here, like even if then, or if this then that conditions, which are fantastic for example, specific request types that are submitted. If it's like an approval for a laptop, you can send it to your procurement team. If it's an approval for time off, for example, you could send it to your HR team or a boss or a manager. You could get very, very creative with this, but I will just set it as a single individual for now to keep things very simple. And oftentimes a single individual is really all you need. So I'll just add a then action. And what we'll do is we'll edit the work item, and I'll find the approver field in here, approver. I'll check the box, and now we could add an approver to this field that's in the dropdown. And in here, all I need to do is pull in myself, a manager, or anybody else as an example, and turn on this automation. Quick tip for automations, I really like to name this the action or the trigger and then the action. So I'll name this, let's call it service request created. I'll add a little arrow and then I'll say add approver. That way I know exactly what's triggering this event, but also what it's doing. And this doesn't matter too much when you have 3, 4, 5 automations, but when you have 50, 60, 1,000, it gets really, really hard to find what you need. And this is sort of my way of actually having automation names that are actually relevant, so you don't need to click into them to know what they do. So I'll turn this rule on and we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and test this out one more time to make sure our approvals are actually running correctly. So I'll create a new work item and we'll call this approval 2. Very, very creative names today. There we go. And then I'll create this and we'll make sure that the approval is automatically filled out. So I'll go to this emailed request, which it should be a service request. And immediately, let's see if perfect. There we go. The automation just ran a little bit late. And if I look at the history logs, you'll see the automation changed a few different elements here. I created the work item and then the approver automation for Jira added myself. So that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. We now have the workflow set up with the approval, with the appropriate transitions, and the correct approver set with the automation. And I'll show you decline as an example since I didn't show that one, but immediately should just go straight into canceled. And that's exactly what we want here. Now, the last thing that I'll cover is the approver field and the ability to change this. So as you saw, we have the approval field and anybody could come in here, and this is an open field, and change the approver and approve it themselves. So what we can do here to prevent this from happening is to remove it from the edit screen of the work item. This is going to be a little bit more technical, so follow with me. It might be a little bit different for you as well, but I'll do my best to explain this in the simplest way possible. So what we'll do is go back to our space settings, and then we're going to go to our request management, and then in here we have a tab for screens. I'll click on screens, and I'll find the work item that I want. In this case, it's my service request right here, and I'll click this little drop down. And in here are each of our individual screens that are shown to the end users. So we have a create screen, which is when I click the create button. We have an edit screen, which is the fields that you can edit. And then we have the view screen or the view issues, which are the fields that you can see. And right now, as you can see, these two are exactly the same. And the problem with that is if I remove something from the edit screen, even though it's still on the view screen, it'll make changes to both of them at the same time. So we need to split these up. And what I'll do is copy this over, copy the exact name. I'll go to my settings icon on the top right, go to work items, and here I will go to my screens. In here, I will paste that same screen name. And what I'm going to do is copy by clicking on the 3 dots and clicking copy. This gives me the exact same screen with the exact same configurations and elements and everything else. And what I will do in this case is remove the copy of option. And I'll go to the very end and name this just let's go ahead and make this one the edit screen. So we'll remove view. This is going to be my edit screen, and I'll click copy to make it official. Now, this hasn't done anything yet. We need to actually go through and apply this to our project to make it active. So let's head back to the screen we were looking at earlier. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that we click on the little pencil icon, and we'll split these up before we make any changes. So I'll click the pencil icon, and what I'll do is go to the edit screen. I'll find the little edit icon, and if you don't have it in here, you might have this set up as like a default. You can associate it with a new operation instead, but I'll click the edit icon right here. And what we'll do is select a new screen for us to use. And let's see what we have here. We have the view and edit, and then we have the view or just the edit screen. And you're gonna have a lot of options in here, especially if your Jira environment it's very, very big. So make sure you take note of the exact name that you used before. And I will click update. Now, if we head back to our project, the same screen we were looking at before, we should see completely different names for both of these options. Now, if I make changes to one, the other will not be affected. So all I'm gonna do is go to the edit screen, and I'm gonna remove the option to edit the approvers. And what we're gonna do is find that approvers item right here. Let me just search for it, approver. There it is, approvers. I'll hover over it and click remove on the very right side, and that's it, we're done. So now I go back to my work item, and I'll try to edit that approvers field. And you'll notice when I try to do that, there's no option for me to click. I'm clicking everywhere right here, and I cannot click on it to change it. like the way that I would for a priority field, for example. I could click it, it opens a dropdown, and now I could change it. So I've removed all edit options from this field entirely, and all of your end users will now just see this as a view field rather than an edit field. And this prevents anyone from just jumping in here, making that change, running that approval, and kind of doing whatever they want in the system. So I know that that is very, very critical for a lot of teams that have this for very specific approvals and security related things. So make sure you're actually doing that. Otherwise, you're pretty much just allowing anyone to approve the work item, and the approval is essentially pointless. So hopefully that gives you an idea on exactly how to run approvals and how to set them up within Jira. But that's really just the beginning. If you really want to use these correctly, you'll want to make sure that you have the queues set up to support these approvals. And if you want to check out a video on how to set up your queues, I'm going to pop it up right here. You can click on that and check it out right now.